the final chaotic months of World War II, as Soviet forces closed in on Nazi Germany's eastern territories, Allied intelligence officers began intercepting fragmentary reports about secret German weapons projects unlike anything previously encountered. Among the flood of rumors, exaggerations, and desperate Nazi propaganda about wonder weapons that would turn the tide of war, certain reports stood out for their specificity and the credible sources from which they originated. German scientists attempting to defect, intercepted communications, and interrogations of captured SS officers all mention various advanced research projects hidden in underground facilities scattered across occupied territories. Most of these projects were real: jet aircraft, ballistic missiles, nerve gases, technologies that Allied forces would eventually discover and document thoroughly. But among these verified programs, intelligence analysts began noticing references to something else, something described in terms so unusual that it defied easy categorization. The report spoke of a device called Die Glocke, the bell, a mysterious apparatus allegedly developed under the highest levels of secrecy by Nazi Germany's most elite scientific units. According to fragmentary accounts, this device was housed in a reinforced underground complex in Lower Silesia, in what is now southwestern Poland. The facility, codenamed Der Riese, the Giant, was one of several massive construction projects the Nazis had undertaken in this region, building extensive tunnel networks and underground installations whose purposes remained unclear even after their discovery by Allied forces. The bell itself was supposedly a metallic object roughly 9 feet wide and 12 to 15 feet high, shaped like a bell and containing 2 counter-rotating cylinders filled with a mercury-like substance that glowed violet when the device operated. The source of much of this information was a Polish intelligence officer and historian named Igor Witkowski, who in the late 1990s claimed to have been granted access to classified documents and testimony from the immediate post-war period. According to Witkowski, he was shown interrogation transcripts of Jakob Sporenberg, an SS officer captured by the Soviets after the war, who had been responsible for security at various secret installations in Silesia. In his testimony, allegedly given before his execution for war crimes in 1952, Sporenberg described the Bell project in considerable detail, including its technical specifications, the personnel involved, and the catastrophic accidents that had killed several scientists during testing. The alleged technical details were extraordinary. The Bell supposedly used a substance codenamed Zerum 525, described as a mercury compound that glowed violet and was stored in lead containers. When the device operated, the counter-rotating cylinders would spin at extremely high speeds, and the mercury compound would somehow generate effects that varied depending on the account, from anti-gravity properties to time dilation to unknown forms of radiation. The device required enormous amounts of electrical power, supposedly drawing electricity from nearby hydroelectric facilities. Testing allegedly occurred in a concrete structure whose walls and floor showed unusual damage, pitting and discoloration that defied conventional explanation. According to the stories that emerged, testing of the Bell had been catastrophic for the scientists involved. Multiple researchers allegedly died from exposure to unknown radiation or energy fields the device generated. Plants and animals placed near the operating device reportedly crystallized and decomposed into a gray-black substance. Human tissue exposed to whatever the Bell produced supposedly underwent similar degradation. The project was allegedly so dangerous and so highly classified that personnel were expendable. Scientists who became too ill to work or who knew too much were reportedly executed by the SS to maintain absolute secrecy. The Bell project, according to these accounts, was supervised by SS General Hans Kammler, one of Nazi Germany's most enigmatic figures. Kammler was an engineer and architect who had risen rapidly through SS ranks, eventually controlling many of Germany's most secret advanced weapons projects. He had overseen construction of concentration camps, designed underground facilities for secret research, and managed the V-2 rocket program's production at Mittelwerk. By war's end, Kammler controlled a vast network of underground factories, research facilities, and weapons projects scattered across Nazi-occupied territories. His whereabouts at war's end remained mysterious. No confirmed death or capture was ever documented, leading to speculation that he had escaped with advanced technology, defected to Allied powers, or died anonymously in the war's final chaos. The bell's alleged purpose varied depending on the source. Some accounts suggested it was an anti-gravity device, an attempt to create a propulsion system that could enable revolutionary aircraft or weapons delivery systems. Others proposed it was an attempt to manipulate time itself, based on exotic physics theories that some German scientists had explored. Still others suggested it was a weapon, a device that could generate destructive energy fields or radiation that would kill enemy forces or destroy enemy equipment. The most speculative accounts connected the bell to Nazi interests in occult and pseudoscientific theories, suggesting the device was an attempt to access higher dimensions, manipulate fundamental forces of nature, or achieve other objectives that straddled the boundary between advanced physics and metaphysical fantasy. Physical evidence for the bell's existence has been claimed but remains disputed. A concrete structure discovered in the Owl Mountains of Lower Silesia, near the Wenceslaus mine where extensive Nazi underground construction had occurred, has been identified by some researchers as the bell's testing facility. This structure, known as the Henge because of its superficial resemblance to Stonehenge, consists of a circular concrete frame with what appear to be mounting points, surrounded by a circular excavation. The structure shows unusual wear patterns that some interpret as evidence of extreme heat or radiation exposure. However, conventional explanations for the structure's purpose and condition are also possible. It may have been a cooling tower, a water tank support, or another industrial installation whose unusual appearance and damage result from normal wartime use and 7 decades of weathering. The documentary evidence for the bell is more problematic. Igor Witkowski claimed to have seen interrogation transcripts and other documents that describe the project in detail. However, he was allegedly granted only limited access. He could take notes but not copy or photograph the documents. No independent researchers have confirmed access to these documents, and Polish and other archives have not released any materials corroborating the specific claims about the bell. Witkowski's account remains the primary source for most detailed information about the project, making it impossible to independently verify his claims or separate documented fact from possible embellishment, misunderstanding, or fabrication. The story of the bell gained wider attention in 2000 with the publication of Witkowski's book on Nazi secret weapons, and subsequently through books by other authors including Nick Cook's The Hunt for Zero Point and Joseph P. Farrell's series on Nazi advanced technology. These works presented the bell as potentially the most significant secret weapon project Nazi Germany had undertaken, more advanced and more revolutionary than the V-2 rocket or jet aircraft, representing a quantum leap in physics and engineering that could have changed warfare and technology fundamentally had it been completed and deployed. However, mainstream historians and physicists who have examined the bell claims have been overwhelmingly skeptical. The technical descriptions, when analyzed by experts in physics and engineering, appear to combine genuine scientific terminology with impossible or nonsensical claims. The supposed effects, anti-gravity, time manipulation, transmutation of matter, would violate well-established physical laws without any plausible mechanism for how they might be achieved. The mercury compound Zerum-525 does not correspond to any known substance, and the described properties do not match any actual mercury compounds. The power requirements described would be enormous, yet the alleged effects would require physics far beyond anything achievable with 1940s technology or even current technology. To understand why the bell story has proven so persistent despite lack of definitive evidence, one must understand the broader context of Nazi Germany's actual advanced weapons programs and the mythology that has grown around them. Nazi Germany did indeed invest heavily in advanced weapons research, achieving genuine technological breakthroughs in several fields. The V-2 rocket was years ahead of Allied capabilities. German jet aircraft, including the Me-262, represented revolutionary advances in aviation. German research into nerve gases had produced substances far more lethal than anything Allied forces possessed. German work on guided missiles, infrared night vision devices, and various other technologies demonstrated sophisticated engineering and scientific capabilities. These verified achievements have created a framework where claims about even more advanced Nazi secret projects seem plausible to general audiences. If Germany could develop ballistic missiles and jet aircraft while fighting a multi-front war, why not anti-gravity devices or time manipulation technology? This reasoning fails to recognize that while Nazi Germany achieved genuine advances in certain areas, these advances were incremental improvements on existing technology, not violations of physical laws. Jet engines and rockets represent sophisticated engineering applied to well-understood physics. Anti-gravity and time manipulation would require physics that does not exist and engineering capabilities far beyond anything achievable with 1940s or even current technology. The historical record shows that Nazi Germany did pursue numerous advanced research programs, some based on sound science and others ranging into pseudoscience and occultism. The Nazi regime's ideological character, combining technological modernism with romantic nationalism and pseudoscientific racial theories, created an environment where legitimate scientific research coexisted with projects based on dubious theories. Himmler's SS, in particular, sponsored research into various fringe areas including occultism, alternative archaeology, and theories about ancient advanced civilizations. The Ahnenerbe organization established by the SS conducted expeditions seeking evidence for Nazi racial theories and investigated legends about ancient technologies and mystical powers. However, the serious weapons development programs that produced actual results were based on conventional physics and engineering. Werner von Braun's rocket team applied established principles of aerodynamics, propulsion, and guidance to create the V-2. Messerschmitt's engineers used known principles of aerodynamics and jet propulsion to design advanced aircraft. The scientists who developed nerve gases worked within established chemistry. These projects succeeded because they were based on sound science, adequately funded and directed by competent engineers. Projects based on pseudoscience or impossible physics produced no useful results, regardless of resources devoted to them. The Bell story incorporates elements that appeal to various audiences interested in World War II mysteries, advanced technology, and conspiracy theories. For those interested in Nazi secret weapons, the Bell represents the ultimate wonder weapon, more advanced than anything publicly known, powerful enough to have changed the war's outcome, suppressed by authorities who captured the technology and concealed it for their own purposes. For those interested in UFOs and anti-gravity technology, the Bell provides a potential origin story, a device that might explain Nazi Germany's rumored development of flying saucers and that might have been captured and reverse-engineered by American or Soviet forces, explaining modern UFO sightings. For those interested in alternative physics and suppressed technology, the Bell represents proof that revolutionary physics was achieved decades ago but kept secret by governments unwilling to release world-changing technology. These narratives share common elements with conspiracy. Thinking more broadly, claims of extraordinary technology or knowledge that establishment authorities deny or suppress, interpretation of ambiguous evidence in ways that confirm predetermined beliefs, resistance to mainstream scientific explanations characterized as part of the suppression, connection of disparate historical events into grand narratives that explain multiple mysteries simultaneously. The Bell story links Nazi secret weapons, post-war technology acquisition by Allied powers, UFO phenomena, and alternative physics into a coherent narrative that explains these various mysteries as connected rather than separate phenomena. The factual elements underlying the Bell story are worth examining separately from speculative interpretations. Nazi Germany did construct extensive underground facilities in Lower Silesia, particularly in the Owl Mountains region. The Project Ries, Project Giant, involved construction of massive tunnel networks, underground chambers, and surface facilities whose exact purposes remain unclear. Some facilities were apparently intended for weapons production or research, others for command centers or refugees for Nazi leadership. Many were never completed before Soviet forces captured the region in early 1945. The concrete structure identified as possibly related to the Bell does exist and does show unusual characteristics, though conventional explanations for these characteristics are available. Hans Kammler, the SS general allegedly in charge of the Bell project, was a real person whose career and fate remain somewhat mysterious. Kammler rose rapidly through SS ranks during the war, eventually controlling much of Germany's advanced weapons development and secret construction projects. His exact whereabouts at war's end are uncertain. Various accounts place him committing suicide, being killed by his own aide, dying in Prague during its liberation, or disappearing under unclear circumstances. The uncertainty about his fate has fed speculation that he escaped with secret technology or was captured by Allied forces and his survival concealed. However, the most likely explanation based on available evidence is that he died during the war's final chaos, and his death was not properly documented. The interrogation of Jacob Sporenberg, which supposedly provided much information about the bell, is documented to have occurred. Sporenberg was indeed captured by Soviets, tried for war crimes, and executed in Poland in 1952. However, the specific testimony about the bell allegedly contained in his interrogation has not been independently verified. The documents Witkowski claims to have accessed have not been made available to other researchers, making it impossible to confirm whether Sporenberg actually described such a device or whether details have been embellished or misinterpreted. The physical science behind the bell's alleged capabilities presents fundamental problems. Anti-gravity, as described in the Bell accounts, would require manipulating gravitational fields in ways that current physics indicates is impossible with any foreseeable technology. Gravity is the weakest of the fundamental forces and is extraordinarily difficult to manipulate. Creating anti-gravity effects would require either exotic matter with negative mass, which has never been observed and may not exist, or manipulation of space-time itself in ways requiring energy far beyond anything available. The rotating mercury cylinders described in the Bell accounts have no plausible mechanism for generating anti-gravity effects. Time manipulation, another alleged capability of the Bell, faces even more severe physical constraints. While Einstein's relativity theory shows that time is relative and can be affected by velocity and gravity, the effects require either velocities approaching light speed or gravitational fields of enormous strength. A device the size of the Bell operating in Earth's normal conditions could not generate time dilation effects detectable with any measurement technology, let alone effects dramatic enough to be noticeable. The energy requirements for producing measurable time manipulation would be astronomical, far beyond anything achievable with 1940s technology. The alleged biological effects, crystallization and decomposition of organic matter, deaths of scientists from mysterious radiation, do not correspond to any known physical phenomena. Radiation can certainly kill and can cause unusual effects on biological tissue, but the specific effects described in Bell accounts do not match known radiation effects. The crystallization of organic matter is not a recognized phenomenon from any form of radiation or energy exposure. These described effects sound dramatic but lack correspondence with actual physics and biology. The persistence of the Bell story, despite lack of definitive evidence, reflects broader patterns in how secret history, conspiracy theories, and technological mythology intersect with genuine historical uncertainty. The end of World War II left numerous mysteries. Nazi technologies that were heard about but never found, scientific personnel who disappeared, projects mentioned in fragmentary documents but never fully documented. This historical ambiguity creates space for speculation and alternative narratives that can be neither definitively proven nor entirely disproven based on available evidence. The declassification of Operation Paperclip and similar programs, revealing that Allied powers did indeed capture Nazi scientists and technology, and that these acquisitions were initially kept secret, has fed beliefs that even more dramatic secrets remain hidden. If governments concealed the recruitment of former Nazi scientists for decades, what else might they be concealing? This reasoning treats the revelation of one genuine secret as evidence that more dramatic secrets must also exist. Even though the logic does not hold, the existence of some secrets does not prove the existence of any particular additional secret. Modern investigations of alleged Bell sites have employed various technologies: ground-penetrating radar, radiation detection, metallurgical analysis of materials from the concrete structure, seeking evidence that might support or refute the claims. These investigations have found nothing that definitively proves the Bell existed as described, but they also have not conclusively disproven all aspects of the story. The concrete structure exists and does show unusual characteristics, though whether these characteristics result from exotic technology or conventional causes remains disputed. The underground complexes in the region exist and were clearly used for secret purposes, though whether one of those purposes was the Bell remains unproven. The Nazi Bell story has entered popular culture through documentaries, books and fictional works that treat it as either historical mystery or established fact, depending on the source's perspective. History Channel programs and similar media have featured the bell as an example of Nazi secret technology, often presenting speculation as more established than evidence warrants. Fictional works have used the bell as a plot device, incorporating it into stories about Nazi occultism, time travel, or advanced technology. This popular culture presence has increased awareness of the bell story, while often obscuring the distinction between documented fact and unverified claims. For historians and researchers, the bell represents a challenge in evaluating claims about secret history. Absolute proof of non-existence is impossible. One cannot definitively prove that a device described in limited sources did not exist, particularly when the alleged project was secret and much documentation from the period was destroyed or remains classified. However, the lack of definitive evidence, the implausibility of the alleged physics, and the reliance on a single main source whose claims cannot be independently verified all suggest that the bell, as described in most dramatic accounts, likely did not exist as claimed. The most plausible interpretation of the available evidence is that Nazi Germany conducted various research projects in underground facilities in Silesia, that some of these projects were advanced and secret, but that the specific device described as the bell is either a misidentification of some other project, an embellishment of something more mundane, or a post-war creation assembled from fragmentary information and speculation. Germany might have conducted experiments with mercury or mercury compounds. Mercury was used in various industrial and scientific applications. There might have been facilities with unusual structures that served purposes now obscure. Scientists might have died in accidents involving radiation or toxic substances. These elements, documented separately in various contexts, might have been assembled into the coherent narrative of the bell without such a specific device actually existing. The lesson of the bell story extends beyond the specific question of whether this particular device existed. It illustrates how historical mysteries are constructed, how ambiguous evidence can support multiple interpretations, and how extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, a standard the bell story does not meet. It shows how genuine historical events, Nazi advanced research, post-war technology acquisition, mysterious facilities and projects can be reinterpreted and embellished into narratives that go far beyond what evidence actually supports. For those seeking definitive answers about the bell, the historical record provides frustration rather than clarity. The device, as described in the most dramatic accounts, capable of anti-gravity, time manipulation, or other physics-defying effects, almost certainly did not exist and could not have existed given 1940s technology and known physics. Something existed in the underground complexes of Lower Silesia, but whether it was a specific device called the bell, what its actual purpose was, and what happened to it remain unknown and may be unknowable, given the destruction of records and the passage of decades.